It's the last show of 2021. I had no idea what year it was this first second because I don't even know what day it is. So how can you expect me to know what year it is? But I know it's the end of it. How about that? The last show of 2021. We've made it. Hi, Claire. I hope you are having a fabulous pre-New Year Thursday. Anywho, very, very excited to be at the end of 2021. Wasn't a terrible year for me, I've got to say. It was actually kind of good. But that said, I'm ready to see it go. Claire, I love you too. I miss you. I really, really, really miss you and our kitty cats. So Claire, who's in the chat right now, Claire's a friend and client, and another friend and client, Jean. Claire and I had 3 kitty siblings, and they've all now passed away. So that is sad. But they were the chunkiest kitties you will ever see, with the best cats ever. The loudest purrs, biggest eaters, they were just the best. So anyway, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what history has to say about 2021. I see it as a transition year. Hi, Tammy, welcome. I think it's one of those years where if you've ever played any like war games, video games, it's the kind of year where you're positioning your ships for like the big battle or campaign or whatever it is. That's what 2021 was for me. I know a lot of people want to set it on fire. I wouldn't really set it on fire, but I would have the flamethrower ready just in case. Moving into 22, though, big things on the horizon. I hope that everyone has taken the time to just kind of chill and simmer and stay healthy, because it's going to be a big one, and not in a bad way. I personally am feeling like we're on the up. So, I mean, I wouldn't really like take my word for it unless it goes well, of course. But in the meantime, I would say that you can, hi Aaliyah, I think that you can be rest assured that we are moving forward, not backward, as we go ahead. So we've got a great show for you tonight. Nikki is coming at some point eventually. I don't know where she is yet. But we've got some guests. Heather Anderson is going to be joining us soon. We're going to talk about the year, just kind of how it started, how it ended, in terms of so many important topics that we've talked about all year, but in particular related to just this social situation that we've been in. It has been kind of one extended year since 2020. And George Floyd, but we've seen some big steps forward in a lot of ways, and then we've seen lots of just kind of moonwalking on back out of the frame of what the year was supposed to be and the direction we were supposed to be going in. So we're going to talk about that issue and many others tonight, but I'm going to bring Aaliyah on right now, if I can find her. Let me see. I'm going to onto the screen. Well, Nikki, if you're here, you can just join me. And I just invited Aaliyah up. I've been here for a little bit. And Aaliyah, if you are not seeing that invite, ping me and let me know. But anyway, hi, Chuck. I would love to hear it from you guys out there in the meantime while we're figuring out what's happening over here in tech land. If you have any big ideas for your 2022, please drop them in the chat. Sunny, hello. I know for me, when I'm talking about what I want oh, Aaliyah, if you are on your laptop, you'll have to get onto a mobile device, phone, iPad, whatever they're called, tablet. You can't get into IG Live unless you're on a mobile device, which is kind of dumb. I don't know. Nikki, why are you in your closet?
I don't know. Hold on. Oh my God. Hold on. I totally just heard you talk about tech difficult. I have no idea.
It's your light. Your light's behind you.
There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go. Much, much better.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, I was just talking about, well, first I didn't know what year it was, of course. But then once I figured that out, I was talking about how 2021 was a year of transition, I think, at least for me. And I think 2022 is going to be a big, powerful year. I think for a lot of us, we're coming out of the sludge, right? Hopefully.
Man, okay, 2021, we can just keep on counting. So,
well, I mean, that's the way it works. We stop counting, something bad has happened.
Like, you know, I have to say that I remember this summer and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like all of a sudden it is literally 2 days before the end of the year.
Poof, I know. I feel like once Labor Day hits, the avalanche begins.
Yeah. But it's also, there was still a bunch of stuff happening. You know, there was still a bunch of stuff.
And now I'm like sideways. Hold on. I'm pretty sure I can switch this around. Well, let's see. It's not switching.
You could always just lay down in bed. And then
These are your things, babe.
Standing up.
I want to lay down in bed. No, it's there's so much stuff still going on. And you know, there was that moment where it was like, oh, look, things have kind of settled down. There's a little bit of a reprieve.
Here.
Haha, JK.
No, I think it is, babe. You see, this is what we're doing, and this is why we have husbands, I think, because they help us figure out technology. This is why I keep this one around.
Well, that and he's wicked smart.
Oh, well, okay. We have that.
You know, so, wicked smart is always handy in a pinch.
So for those of you who may remember, we've had Dr. Sunny Ali on the show several times. He is, as I just said, super smart, but he is also an educator. He is heavily involved in trying to uplift and elevate Black males and bring them into the teaching atmosphere, because there are not a lot of Black teachers out there. So we've had him on the show several times, and he always shares his fabulous wisdom, but not today because he just left.
He's coming. Well, wait, hold on. Back up. We just got to back up for a second because you look gorgeous.
I was so mad before this call. I was in such a damn mood that honestly, I said to myself, if I don't put some makeup on and look like a real human, I'm probably going to be nasty. So I put some makeup on and look at myself and I think, oh, you can't be mad when your lipstick looks so great with that scarf.
You look gorgeous.
Thanks.
Yes.
Babe. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, 2021, 2022, okay. All right, 22. But I will say this, my cousin Gigi, which we have to have her on, but my cousin Gigi spoke about, and I don't have it in front of me, but she spoke about 4 years, like from kind of like the sequence of 4 years. And this is one of those from 2020 to 24. And then, of course, I'm crossing my fingers that we are ushering in the age of Aquarius.
I thought that already started.
Yes. That we are still on that path.
Well, it's not looking so great. It's not looking so great so far for the age of Aquarius, but I still have high hopes. I'm worried about our friends.
Right.
Hello, Mr. Reed. Hi, Tasha. P.S. Tasha, still laughing about our show 2 weeks ago. Thank you. It was just so much fun. But yeah, and a lot of people don't like transitions. A lot of people are looking at the new year with dread. And I personally, it's like a fresh start. Even though you usually end up in a very similar swamp, there's something to me about the fresh air that comes with the idea of having to write that new number down, and that, the whole, off they go. The whole idea of just being able to say, okay, I am going to, whether it's reframe something that maybe didn't go as planned, or just kind of make a pivot at the top of the year so I've got the whole rest of the year to make it work. I like it. I like the transitions. I'm not a big New Year's resolution person, though. I think that is just like a recipe for misery.
Well, first of all, hats off to you if you're one of those people who can get the date right, before it's April.
March. Yes. Hi, Anita. Welcome.
So, she has the screen lock on.
Yeah, but I don't know how to tell her how to fix it if it's on an Android. I've tried to help people with that before, and I just haven't been able to figure it out.
Android?
I think so.
And then, but no, the New Year's resolution thing. I haven't done the New Year's resolution thing in over 10 years. Because I get my chart done every year. My new year for me personally, and how I, live, goals, ambitions, is my solar return.
Your birthday.
Which is my birthday. Yeah. So, the New Year's resolution thing. And, you posted something on social media the other day, and goal now. You don't have to goal on the first. You can goal now. Yay,
all right.
Hi. Real quick before
we
introduce
from
you.
The computer to an iPad, and so this is the iPad.
Yeah.
It's Ali's iPad, so I have no idea how to work Apple technology.
That's okay.
We'll see.
Okay, you're here now. Real quick, I just want to say, I think where people get buggered up with resolutions is, and I'm writing a little piece about this right now, but it's one thing to say that you have a goal or a resolution or whatever you want to call it. You can call it a banana sandwich. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, it's like, oh, you know what?
You can call a banana sandwich.
I'm going to be 5'8" tomorrow. It's completely ridiculous. I am going to be the next Elon Musk. It's impossible to do just because you just said it. It's more than just the idea. It's the structure and the scaffold that you build behind it. It doesn't work any other way.
And being observant of the trajectory that you're on, what are the, I want to go live maybe in France for 6 months. Oh, that's right. I have kids and a husband.
I mean, will they really notice if you're gone? Oh yeah, no, I don't have laundry. Screwed.
No, I don't do laundry. No.
I don't either.
That was early on.
Yeah.
So, but it's looking at your angle, your trajectory. What are you in the process of doing? Emotionally, where are you? If you have little people around you that, that might require an eyeball or two, a little nod or a glance that way. What is their trajectory? And that could just be as simple as, your kids have to go to school, but it's, you said this thing, I want to be the next Elon Musk. And it's like, but I think that sometimes people do put forth these sort of grandiose, I want to do this thing that it's big, it's bright, it's brazen, it's all of these things. But is that really your trajectory? And I want to be clear, people, I'm like, reach for the stars and catch them.
Yeah.
It's not saying that you shouldn't have grandiose dreams and desires and goals and ambitions. But again, what trajectory are you on? Because we don't live in a vacuum.
Well, and if you don't like that, then you change it. You work to change it, but you have to be observant of the trajectory, not just kind of coasting along. You throw a beach ball in the ocean, it's going to get somewhere eventually, but without a plan, without a direction, without a motor, without a driver, it's going to end up wherever.
Without the resources, right? And that's individual or external. You can't be an Elon Musk unless, well, frankly, was your father wealthy? You already start off kind of in your territory.
Yeah, semantics.
If you're only buying Jovan Musk, probably not going to be Elon Musk.
Ooh,
I'm just saying.
No, right. What is that, like the 70s, 80s?
It's like the armpit of the wherever, like the corner of your CVS.
Yeah.
Sorry to anyone who is wearing Jovan Musk. I know James Crater is not. Hi, James, and thank you, Sissy. Happy Kwanzaa, belated Christmas, New Year's, whatever.
Yeah.
So Aaliyah is here. Welcome. Nikki, please talk about how you guys know each other.
So Aaliyah is the wife of arguably one of our most favorite guests, Suni Ali, Dr. Ali. And she and I are getting to know each other more and more. We definitely connected this year. And, I've known Suni for so long.
For years.
God, I have.
Yeah.
I've known Suni maybe for a few years.
Mm.
Suni and I have known each other for a while. And because we taught at the same school and, stayed in the same orbit, and he knows my sister. And then like all of a sudden this year I met Aaliyah and I was like, was she like a secret? Were you just like, keeping her all to yourself? And
Aaliyah, why do people hide their spices, their spouses from you?
Their spices, yeah.
Dr. Erin hides her spouse from you. Now, Suni, like, what?
So, she, I don't know, it was something we did, we did something, we were cooking something for somebody and they came and just a force, super educated, super articulate, but just a force to be reckoned with. And then it was really funny because I still didn't really know what she did for like a couple of weeks after that. And she could have been like, scaling the Eiffel Tower for all I knew. And then we just got into this conversation about mental health, and she's like, oh yeah, that's what I do. And I was like, oh, hashtag clutches pearls. And in this really, and she can definitely dive into detail because it was sort of like this flashbang, and it was like, yes, I'm a mental health person in this really weird small town USA, like super extra ultra white, but yet we are these people who chose, these very brown people who chose to move, to this small town USA, very white, affluent community. And there is a price to pay for doing that. I'm going to say it that way.
There is. And it's funny. And
Nah, you got to tell us who you are.
have,
Don't even tell us who you are. Give us the
oh,
deets. Mm-mm.
so, but I felt like you said enough.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
but
Different when it
yeah,
comes.
No, there's never enough.
No.
Well, and again, I'm a Levi, and as Nikki mentioned, my husband, Dr. Ali, he's a professor, and I am a clinical therapist, and we live out here in the burbs. And Nikki, what Nikki failed to recall on our history. So she knows my husband and the family pretty well, and I know several of her relations too. And she was looking to move, and yeah, remember that? And you called my husband up, and he's like, yeah, you got to come out here. This place is wonderful. You can raise your family out here. And so my husband, this is how I heard of Nikki. Hey, my friend Nikki is thinking about moving out here. We're going to meet up. I'm going to show her around. Where should I take her? And I'm like naming all these sites. You got to take her here. You got to take her there. And that's actually how Nikki even came, on the radar. And then before you know it, she moved, her and her family. And since then, and she's just such an open person. So she's just like, bring the family, stop by, anytime. And that's exactly how welcoming she is. Doesn't know you, anything about you, but she's like, yes, let's do this. So it helped create somewhat of community in a place where oftentimes you don't completely feel connected to the community. It's kind of like there's a code of silence that you can participate in certain activities. Your kids can be in the schools, but you're not still like really, part of that information source. You don't, really get those phone calls, and you'll walk into the room and you're like, oh, everybody knows that this is going on out here. And you're like, oh, wait, everybody? Because we didn't get the message. We didn't get the memo. So you have that. And it's important when you meet people that you can connect with and build a sense of your own community with them, so you don't feel as left out, and you give each other support and suggestions and ideas. And believe it or not, you run into a lot of the same problems. My kids are older than hers, but you run into a lot of the same problems, and you go, oh yeah, that school is known for that. All right, we did that. This is who you talk to. Yeah, a lot of the same issues.
Well, we have someone else joining us tonight as well, Heather Anderson, and she can talk a lot about this subject too. I'm looking forward to you meeting her, Leah, because I'm already feeling this conversation. Fabulous. I have my scarf on. I'm ready, just in case.
I hope she knows how to get in and join and do all of this stuff. I'm really new to Instagram. Let's hope her journey is simpler than mine.
Heather.
Fingers crossed.
She knows her way around these.
Heather knows her way around.
Technological
We need Heather. We need
situations here. She's got it going.
All right, good.
Yes, but in talking about that whole school dynamic, with Heather's story, and she'll share it on her own, but the things she's had to do to adapt to the environment that her kids are in, as a white mom of two adopted Black, like, superpower children, like the Wonder Twins, literally the Wonder Twins. Yeah. Shape of a runner, form of a snowboarder. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always happy to have you. And meet Aaliyah. Aaliyah, you remember Dr. Ali Sunni. You were on a show with him back toward the beginning of the year. Well, here's his upper half. The whole family. So glad to have you. So many things to talk about, because when we talk about how far we've come or how far we need to go, and this transition, I'll call it, this movement, this moment, I'm not even sure what it is anymore. This maelstrom is more like it. You know, you both come at this from very different angles, and yet we all come to it from the same need and desire and goal.
Mm-hmm.
So when Nikki suggested this, I was like, this is a dynamic duo. We've got to make this happen. So thank you both for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So Nikki, I wanted you to start just talking about the school thing. Oops. Because there's a lot to talk about when you are moving into new schools and different settings and moving to places that on paper may come across as diverse and welcoming, but in all actuality and reality, once you get there, you realize that that's really just the hashtag.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I wanted to say, because Heather, we've actually wanted you back on for a while, and I was like, we got to get her on before the end of the year. The effort that you put forth on behalf of your school district and the specific population that you are just a force for, the effort that you put forth, I'm like, dang, Heather, I need a nap for you.
And can we just give a little bit of background? Heather, for those of you who don't know, our darling friend Heather Anderson.
Mrs. Anderson.
Exactly. Exactly. She is like with surgical precision, like Agent Smith. She will just go on and say, you call this equitable. You as a school district, you as members of this community should be ashamed of yourselves. And then she just tears it down, but in such a way that is like, holy crap, she just ripped my balls off and I didn't even see it coming.
Yeah.
How do you, and I asked you this before and you were like, well, you know, it's not a big deal, but Nikki just said it. I'm going to say it too. How do you maintain the stamina?
Because she's got the Wonder Twins.
You know, because I was a forgotten child.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody had stamina for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because I think every Black child in our school district has the ability to be wonderful and brilliant, and that every night we all sleep asleep under the sheets while we are consciously not supporting that child in their brilliance is a night that they don't ever get back in childhood. That thought keeps me awake many nights. You only get one chance to be a baby and be a child and to have magic.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
show's over. Thank you. I mean,
you know, for those of you, because we do have some new people, because, you know, when we met Heather, when we stalked Heather, when we met Heather, we were on, what do you call it? Facebook. And, you know, something came across my feed and I saw a friend of mine, it's a video and literally I was like, oh God, you know, not another white woman espousing her wisdom, her particular wisdom. And I'm looking at all these Black women on my feed going, yes. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, yes to what? Betty freaking Crocker. So I'm like, oh, damn.
You're thinking about the white savior narrative.
Well, no, because I hadn't even like looked at it yet.
No,
I see her talking.
You assumed as much.
And so I'm like, oh, damn, I gotta like listen to this. So, I turn it on, and this is full on smack dab pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, oh my gosh, the whales are back. There's dolphins. The air is clear. You know, this is everyone, and like, you know, and so I'm like, okay, what is she got to say? And I hear her start off with nice white ladies, and I'm like, oh, let me get my headset. And she just starts talking about how basically nice white ladies this, Heather, you know, this resonated with me, but basically how nice white ladies basically are the coal for the engine that moves racism and keeps it there. And so I'm like, Misty. And so we're like on Facebook, like, who is this woman? And we're literally like this because, and I'm like, oh, they can't see us. That's right, because it's Facebook. And so I'm like, she's got brown babies. And I'm like, whose babies are those? And so, you know, I'm like, who? And then I'm like, oh no, I'm like, Misty, look, she's got them in like the car seats that she carried them home in. And so I was like, oh my God, she is being a mother to these Black babies. So now I'm like on Messenger and I'm like, hi, it's Nikki. We don't know, you know, you don't know us. And I'm like, but, you know, can we talk to you? Can you come on to our show? And she messages, and like 2 days later, she was on.
Wow.
Well,
Yes.
I don't think it was quite 2 days, but yeah, I mean, and what I've loved about Heather is, you know, we follow each other on Facebook, and she takes no prisoners in a way that we can't sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she's standing up for, you know, her children, her babies, their futures, and other babies' futures as well. But she's also framing it from a place of, listen, I'm showing you my warts because you can do this. The fact that maybe somebody sat on the sidelines when you needed help doesn't mean that you should do the same now. And that's Heather's power. And I think that the amount of energy that takes
Mm-hmm.
is so vast. She's going after the school board, the snowboard team, the partridge, the pear tree, all of it. So and also speaking in a way that, you know, also tells us where she's come from and the why behind it. And I just love it. I just love it, love it, love it, love it.
It takes bravery to do that.
Yeah.
You know, to go against the norm, to speak up when you see, you know, wrongs or injustices, and advocate for people that have been denied a voice. You know, so that's a wonderful thing. And I think we all have our lanes, you know, and we come and we do meet. We're all working for the same thing, just coming from different directions and doing it. And it's either way is so important. So that's phenomenal. Not just the reason why you do it, but the fact that you are brave enough to stand up and say, no, you know, not like this, no more, you know.
And the thing that I think that really just kind of kept you to here for me was Heather tells these, I mean, I cringe when I read your story sometimes, Heather. Like, I'm like, you know, and it's like, you're talking about this journey of a child who suffered significant trauma and how impactful that is in your, even just your story about Hattie and her friends in the pool, and you and this thought process that goes through your head every single time. Meanwhile, Hattie is living her best life, and you know, and there's this process that you're going through, and you're still able to give her that. And then I'm talking to Aaliyah, and Aaliyah's like, okay, traumatized child number 567. And how can I help this kid not have to do this thing that Heather is recounting daily? And I'm like, they have to be in the same space at the same time, because Heather is living proof, and it's not a racial thing. It doesn't have anything to do with race. People have trauma, and trauma stays with us.
Yes.
And it is so impactful, and it shapes and it molds how we then shape and mold our little people. And you know, and Heather, you know, bless you, because you are beating that back. Yeah. You are. And then I talked to Aaliyah, and she's like, here we go again. Here we go again.
Let me just say that I personalize it. So I never think child number X, Y, and Z. I have a name to it. You know, that is, you know, Robert, that is Mary, that is whoever, you know, they,
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Each and every person, because even if it's the same, some of the same, like oppression that they are experiencing. And I know I have shared that with you, Nikki, first time. Even if it's very similar oppressions, each and every one, it adds to the kind of my sense of disgust, you know, my sense of like anger, and just it motivates me to want to care for them and the people that are coming after them. You know, it's like, if, you know, that saying, if not now, then when? And so every single time I hear a story like, you know, with so many of our kids going through, I think, all right, you know, when is this going to stop? When are we going to be able to have a safe environment to raise our families, and allow kids to just be kids and not to be stigmatized or oppressed, you know? And so, so it is very personal. I mean, it's my work, but it's personal, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to see it. And so again, you know, this is something that always just stays in the forefront of my mind whenever I see Heather, because Heather and her husband made a very conscious choice to raise their children in the way that was going to be most suitable for their children, versus just sliding them into white suburbia. And, you know, and so the thing that I go is like, okay, yeah, so that means other people can make that choice too. Because I'm gonna be real, I'm gonna be honest, you know, this comes up often where, you know, people have an issue with white people raising Black kids. If you can offer love to a child, I'm gonna start there. That's just that's my top tier. If you're someone who can offer love to a child, great.
Yep.
But then you know, let's keep going. Let's take it a step further. And let's keep it moving in a sense. Does my life support that role? Because the reverse is for the 3 Black women on this program. We consciously made a choice to be in predominantly white Pleasantville type towns. Yeah. Because we want our kids to know that that is accessible to Black, brown children as well. Like you know, and you know, just really quick, one of my doctors said to me, she's a Black woman, she lives in Naperville. Aaliyah knows, you know, what that is, and she said, but it's hard to say that we're not accepted here if we don't move here, if we don't live here. Yeah. If we don't put ourselves in that circumstance. But when we make that choice, so from Heather's perspective, and she's talked about this, as a white person, you will lose friends, because there are some white people who are just not going to be like, no, that just doesn't work for them. And as a Black person, you get ostracized. Yep. Why did you move? Why did you move to that town?
Yeah.
You know what? And so this group of people right here, yes, we're the Justice League.
It all comes back to comics for us, doesn't
it? So that was that, but really Heather's experience and her candidness about her experience, and then what Aaliyah is dealing with on a daily basis with all in this very lily white town. And
I work in this town,
right? And this county, that's what I was trying to say.
County, which is actually one of the second or third largest in Illinois, the first Black therapist they had for the county. And we're talking about the year, because I started at this, but working with the county only just a couple of years ago. So we're not talking about 1970, 1980, we're talking about, we're still in like 2020, like this right before the pandemic. And I was like, oh, I want to work closer to home. You know, I've been driving out. You're going to the city. You want to, I live here. I want to have the benefit of just driving minutes to work. And I do, you know, my commute is wonderful. And then you find out, oh, I'm the first that looks like this. So how is that going to be? And we're talking microaggressions from some very intelligent, no doubt well-meaning, incredibly like clinically, you know, wonderful therapists, but still some microaggressions and some getting used to. And you would think that impact would not register as loudly. And I think to myself that if in the therapeutic environment where we're typically a lot more huggy, you know, you're in a therapist's office when the therapists are like crying together, sharing stories, hugging on one another. We typically are that supportive of one another. If they can still have some kind of hesitancy or tension, imagine how the county is in terms of the citizens, in terms of being receptive and being open and being as genuine in terms of their idea of what to expect. It's been a journey for me, you know, as a citizen of the county, as well as, you know, a professional working in the county. It's been a bit of a journey. You know, I've had clients that'll come in and see me and go, oh, no, okay, well, let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure if you are, you know, the person for my, you know, my family. You're like, okay, all right then, you know, you're probably right.
Since you're going to put that wall up.
You're probably right.
Well, sometimes it's not worth the argument. It's like, okay, you know, I got enough people in the queue that I don't have to deal with this.
I don't. And you look at that child, and this is where
Robin, we're in DuPage. I just want to answer Robin's question. We're DuPage County.
Oh, DuPage in Illinois.
Yeah. We actually live in Wheaton, you know, Billy Graham land.
Wheaton College, yes. So it's a very religious right community. And I will say that the kids are rarely as uncomfortable as the parents. And that is not at all the majority of my clients, not at all. I have a very diverse clientele, and most of them are very receptive to the services I provide. But usually in those other instances, the kids are looking like they are excited. They want to get started. They don't care, you know, and that's how we know, like, continued knowledge that racism is taught. Like, there's so much proof to show that this is a reinforced behavior. It's not a natural thing.
Yeah, Heather, I'd love to know, what is it, what do your kids say when, you know, you've been potentially on a rampage, maybe at the school board or on social media, and, you know, they go into school the next day? Like, do they hear anything from their less melanated fellow students about that? Do they ever feel like, Mom, can you just stop talking about it for 5 minutes?
You know, I think they feel like that at home sometimes, or when they hear me on calls. Sometimes I'll get texts from them like, you're sounding a little white woman on this call right now. You can that from. But for my activism, we've tried really hard to slide myself out. I don't do a lot in their school. That my children go to a global majority school. Their school is 87% Black and high poverty. And so, yeah, we're choosing. It's so funny. I have a friend who's like, you're literally choosing what Black parents run from for your Black children. And I'm like, I know. And if I P.S. If I thought there was any safe and amazing place for my Black children, I would pick it. We're all just picking through a thing of trade-offs.
Yep.
Right.
We're either subsidizing their culture, or we're subsidizing their academics, or pick many of the layers. And for me, I felt like I could make up the academics and I couldn't make up the culture. So that was the choice. I don't think it's a binary. I respect parents Black parents and who homeschool, who do whatever we can to make us a childhood magical for our children who don't get that.
Yeah.
So, but I do really, their principal knows my role in the system, and she knows who I am. And I try really hard to let her run her school. This is one of the principals in this district that I have the most respect for. And so that makes it easier for me to be like, you let me know if you need me, you know who I am and what I do, and I'm going to stay out of your way. So, I think it's an interesting balance, because Minneapolis is a small city. It's not as big as, Chicagoland. And so it's a small city.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about where we live, so if you are in Chicago, the city proper, the way that taxes for education are divvied up, it is based on the wealth component. And so you see the disparities, you see which neighborhoods have low home ownership, and you see what the schools look like, you see the lack of resources versus the schools that have that are in very affluent neighborhoods. Our selective enrollment, I don't know if that's a Chicago term, but our selective enrollment schools, so these are the public schools that are upper echelon, you have to test in, yada, yada, blah, blah, skippy. So most people are familiar with Whitney Young because that is where Michelle Obama graduated high school. So Whitney Young, at one point when my sister was there, my sister Kimya, when she was there, it was like this melting pot. And I remember, so let's see, I'm about 7 years older than Kimya. So when she graduated high school, I just remember all of the kids from Whitney Young, and I remember there being Black, brown, 5 different Latinos and one person, Asian, but Pacific Islander, not just Japanese, not just Chinese. Out of about 2,000 kids, it was this huge melting pot. It is now predominantly white.
Yeah.
Northside College Prep. There were parents who were fined for living in the burbs and having their kids go to Northside College Prep. They were fined. They were not asked to leave the school. So to go to a Chicago public school, especially at that level, and there are probably 5 schools that are at that level where you have to test in. Walter Payton, which a lot of people don't know, is actually a charter school. Rauner, who was our governor at some point, basically paid for his son to get into the school and then slid one of his people in. And again, upper echelon school, his kid didn't test in. And so this is what we're dealing with in the city. So even in this, city, and they're all on the north side. With the exception of Whitney Young, which is sort of it's not considered it's like the southwest side, but it's
near west. I think
it's down the street from where Harpo Studio was. So if you think of it that way, it's down the street from where Harpo Studios used to be. But it is not considered the south side. It's considered the west side. Now out here in
Nikki, let me just say real quick about what you're saying. I remember reading an article that for these few schools, admission is tougher than getting into an Ivy League college.
Yes.
That is like for every one slot, they have hundreds of thousands of applicants applying. And you think about that and you go, well, gosh, there are a lot of, Ivy League colleges out there. And yet for the city of Chicago, it is easier for somebody to possibly get into an Ivy League college than it is to get into one of these upper echelon, high schools, which makes students have to compete for their education. And it gets really stressful and really rough. And especially when, you know, if they fail to get into one of those schools, it is less likely that they'll get into, say, one of the top colleges. You know, it is less likely that their high school will even have resources, because then they're relegated to their neighborhood schools. And guess what? Their homes are undervalued. And yet the school's resources are based on the value of those neighborhoods. So it really sucks, you know, and it's like one of the very definitions of systemic racism, right? It plays out really horribly for our people.
If you have so then there are elementary schools that feed into these high schools, and every elementary school, so elementary schools here, Chicago does not have middle schools. They do have a few academic programs that you go in as a 7th grader into a high school. You start, they have a 7th through 8th, but Chicago doesn't typically have middle schools. So then you have these upper echelon elementary schools where there is a certain allotment. If you live in the neighborhood, that's just your school. The upper echelon elementary schools are all in affluent, white neighborhoods. And so you're like, so you just can't win for losing.
But you can test into some of them. I mean, you
definitely can, but you know, but where we live, I believe when I asked the principal at the elementary school where we live, high property values here. They're only relying on their budget. Only 9% of our budget relies on state funding, and where we live. So the tax dollars go directly to, and what Illinois was trying to do at one point, was take all of the tax dollars from Illinois, send them down to Springfield, and then distribute them across the states. And of course, that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And so it's why we could have special COVID testing. Our schools here, you can do that. What's it called? It's like the swab test. Our school district had that. We've had it now for almost a year. No, I'm lying. No, I'm not. No, we've had that. So there is a privilege, and we do reap the benefit of a lot of what goes on in our community. But it's also the swab test.
The PCR.
It's also the swab test. And then they had this sort of tracking thing, and then your kid could go in, and then every X number of days your kid would do their swab, and then they'd submit it. But it was a lot of money. And our school district, because of where we are, that was just a no-brainer. That was something that they had the funds to do it, and they went on ahead and did it. When we finished that horrid year of e-learning, we were able to jump right in, and we went from having the rack of Chromebooks that everybody just kind of drove around from classroom to classroom. By the end of that, by the spring of 20, there was a Chromebook for every kid.
Yeah.
This is what I feel like until we pay reparations for redlining to begin with. That's the bare minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for
a little louder, please, for the people
military. I mean, because housing and income taxes are tied to quality of education on purpose. Yeah. It is a way of keeping Black children out of the successful track. And it is a way of keeping our caste system in. And when I talk to people all the time, when I talk to white folks who live in the suburbs or who live in a wealthier area who don't understand, I say, every parent I work with wants the same thing for your child, for their child that you want for your child.
Absolutely.
they just don't have they have just the barriers in front of them to get those things for their children. You cannot imagine them. You couldn't sleep at night if you had to deal with them.
Yeah.
And you would quit if you had to see what they had to deal with.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the moms that I work with, the system punishes them for being poor and being Black on repeat. It's heartbreaking to see, but that I really just don't understand how we ever get to any kind of equity in education without creating stable housing, which means that we would have to repair harm that was done intentionally to entire communities.
And let's take that up a notch. The median household costs, I mean, the median home costs right now is $400,000 nationally. Is the first time it's ever hit that mark. It never goes backwards.
No.
So when we look at that and we look at where those communities, where those $400,000 homes are, and now we're saying that's the median, which means that's the average, which means we're probably still not getting great things for that $400,000 when we talk about safety and education and all of these other things.
Oh, yeah.
The lower income, those disparities are becoming more and more vast. And so we can take education out of it and add other things. When we talk about things like what does the community have to offer, the community proper have to offer the people that live within that community, hell, how are they keeping up with the taxes to be a community in and of itself to the state? It gets bigger and bigger. And as that continues to percolate, people start falling. There's no ability to be able to pick people that are at the bottom up, elevate them, and keep them working within society. Hell, for a lot of people to work, to live in a $400,000 home, let's look at where the minimum wage is. Okay, so we don't want to raise minimum wage. I'll have that discussion. If we don't want to raise minimum wage to a living wage, then what we're saying is you can't afford to exist in a way that allows you essentially personhood.
Yes. We will pay foster families more than we will support a first family to stay together. I mean, I have two moms that I work with that are dear to me that I am watching them get swept underneath the machine, and I'm watching it in slow motion, and it feels like there's nothing we can do to stop it.
Yeah. That's real. I will say I have multiple clients whose family is currently experiencing homelessness. In DuPage County, we are the second wealthiest county in Illinois. These are people living in DuPage County, in the second wealthiest county in Illinois, and their families are homeless. And we don't even talk about that as being a problem. How does that impact them in terms of going to school? You know, how is that in the midst of a pandemic? You know, in the midst of everything, like we have a maelstrom of things, you know, happening, right? And on top of being a kid, a child, you are basically, you're invisible.
Yeah.
You know, you're poor. If you're poor enough that you don't even have a home, you have no voice.
And you know what people say? People are quick to say, well, you know what? You're in the second wealthiest county in Illinois. Just move. Do you know what it costs to move? Have you taken a look at how expensive everything is right now? To move, just renting a truck for 2 days, storage if you need it, then it's changing jobs. It's all these other things. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, you know, you don't have to make sacrifices. We all make sacrifices at times. But if the sacrifice is to jump out of the sizzling griddle into the boiling pot, then that's not it's a
there's no choice. Yes.
It's a non-choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the lower income residents here, going back to the housing, so when the projects were disbanded in the city of Chicago, Section 8 residents had no place to go. And I say that not because there wasn't Section 8 housing in the city. Wealthier or more stable neighborhoods, they found ways around having to accept the Section 8. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I always say this, Vegas was built by people who came from Chicago. The new developers have the option of saying X percentage of our new development will be designated for low income housing. Oh, but there's always a catch. Or you can pay this fine into the housing little pot, and then you don't have to do that.
Well, and the best kept secrets of public education is how much developers fund school board elections.
So when the projects disbanded, the Section 8 vouchers started spreading out across the suburbs. Ripple effect, right? So they began to move further and further. So you have people who are in this affluent suburb or this affluent county. This looks like Oz to them.
Yeah.
To walk into a school where there's no metal detectors, where there's still the little 5th and 6th graders doing, well, 5th grade, because our middle school starts at 6, doing patrol, where the playground, I mean, behind Madison, where my kids went to elementary school, you could simultaneously play soccer, football, and basketball all at the same time, because that's how big the field is. And that's not even the playground, one of 3, because there are 2 in the front for the smaller kids.
Meanwhile, city schools have to fight to keep their playgrounds safe all the time. And those kids, you know, you complain because they get into trouble. You know, but you don't provide any opportunities after school or before school. You don't have any monitoring of what's happening at these after school activities, if there are any, and you blame it on the kids.
And elementary school, for the record, I don't know who made this plan. Elementary school starts at like 9 o'clock. So if you have a job and you can get there, and school is from like 9 to 3. And so you still have this obstacle of, what do I do with my kid before school? What do I do with my kid after school? Because I'm still trying to have a job. You know,
I would say too, a lot of affluent areas, there's grass and trees, you know, and that sounds so simple, right? But the kids, they get to go around and run around in their space just to scream and yell and chase and they're not, they might be worried about a wild turkey, you know, a wild goose.
Those damn geese.
Yes, right. Those geese, right. But they're not worried about the 2-legged, you know, predators that, you know, are at prey on our children and especially predominantly poor communities. So there's always that give and take, that constant, you know, questioning of, did I make the right decision? Wherever you wind up, right? You know, and I always find as women, as mothers, we're constantly second guessing what's good for our family, what's good for our children. You know, did we do this right? We're constantly going over and driving ourselves insane with the stress of a decision that you made with the best of intentions, with the information you had in front of you at the time. You know, and so it's real, but we're constantly weighing those decisions for our families.
You know, we've had a real issue with carjacking in our city. It's been on a real uptick. And often in our neighborhood's a hot spot for carjacking. And often in our neighborhood, I can hear the helicopters buzzing low looking for carjackers. And I'm just going to share this really raw. This week I was sitting at our uptown Target. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was punching in the parking on my app. And 2 teens came up on either side of my car and tried my locks while I was sitting in my car to carjack my car. Terrifying.
Now go to work behind that.
Now
go to family behind that. Go to school. Actually just get some sleep, right?
Well, and
get some sleep. Go into the store and then come back to your own car.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? Yeah. Like, I'm at Target. I really needed new britches, but now I'm afraid to get out of this car and buy my britches.
Yes.
But yes. And all I can, and this is at a time when we have, if you drive through our high poverty neighborhoods, which our neighborhood sits next to, the community centers have not opened since COVID. Now, they are not open, right? And so when I think of this, I think we would rather hunt these babies with
helicopters.
How much does the helicopter cost to run back and forth 12, 15 hours a day? How much does that person cost, right? And then go by the community centers and they're closed, and you're like, these children have, and we can't get busing for after school program. My kid's school is from 2. So those kiddos, there's a free basketball program, there's free home ec, there's free debate, there's all kinds of things, but you have to provide your own transportation. And so for so many of our kiddos, that time between when mom gets home from work and when they're home alone and unsupervised, they can't do the enriching things that make school fun. You know? And so much of it is about, we'd rather hunt poor kids than teach them. And
excuse me.
I don't blame the kiddos who did it. I literally looked back at them and saw them and thought, if I knew their mama, I would call them. I would call their mama. But because and I couldn't report them because our society's failed them too miserably.
Well, and if you report them, whereas in a community like mine, the police officer might go over and say, don't do that, son. And if you do it, I'm going to come back and tell you not to do it again. In that community, you're creating a police situation, essentially. Yeah. It's not a matter of, we are the police. We're going to go in and guide these children. We're going to help them, and we're going to give them other options and elevate them and provide solutions. We're going to go into that situation and we're going to strap up and show them that we're bigger than they are. And then you end up with carnage.
That's right.
There's no place for these poor kids to turn. And, people blame their parents, but if their parents came up in that same situation, then how do they know a way out? It's kind of like when people get out of prison and they're like, wow, I felt much better when I was in prison. Because that's all they knew.
You can't pull up your bootstraps if you don't have bootstraps.
You don't even have boots, for the love of Pete.
No.
And so I don't know if you guys heard this. Robin, if she's still on here, she might know a little bit more about it than me. There are now gangs of kids roaming the city of Chicago and just attacking people. A woman was just beaten, and they took her stuff. They beat her on the L platform. This was intentional. It wasn't just knock her down to get her stuff. It was a group of kids who I'm hoping they didn't take pleasure in kicking and beating her and then taking her stuff.
I saw the line at that level of physical violence. You can steal a car. You can push a lady over and steal her bag even. But that is different.
So there are like these now roving bands of kids. And I'll tell you the thing that kind of frightens me is we have I'm going to call them a little group of assholes who were very engaged in all of the TikTok challenges and destruction. It's destruction of property. um, it's destruction of property. And it's when, because the legislation in Illinois changed about how you punish youth for things that happen at school. And there's such a shroud around it. And it's like, yeah, no, if they do something bad, then they should be punished for it. Now, here's where policy matters. The policy is in place, these discrepancies in terms of, yes, this is the policy, but we can choose to apply said policy to this situation, but not to this situation. Well, what's going to happen? Lots of white affluent parents are going to go to bat for their kids. So then, even though the policy is there,
that's right.
You know, Barbie and Chet come over and they're going to advocate for, yes, I know my kid set the bathroom on fire. You know, we're in a pandemic. He's stressed.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
You notice we're remodeling one half of our house because he might have set that on fire too.
Yeah.
But in the bathroom at school, this is just stress. And so they're going to advocate for him.
Yeah.
And then you have this family who literally doesn't have a pot to piss in. Mm-hmm. And they just think, oh, we're in Pleasantville. Take the suspension, keep your head down, and hopefully, crossing fingers, hearts, and toes, we just get through high school. So now you have these policies and procedures that are in place that are going to be a detriment to Black, brown kids because their parents cannot advocate, or they don't know how to advocate, or they're not in a position to advocate.
Even if they do. So I work with a lot of families, and I know I mentioned that to you before, Nikki. I also work with a lot of the schools here in the district. Mm-hmm. And one of my roles for my child clients is to be an advocate. So that is, if something happens at the school, I will go for bat, you know, with the school administrators for that kid to go, all right, you know what? There is a mental health component, or you guys weren't keeping them safe, or, you know, maybe we need some kind of IEP or other, you know, laws or protections for this particular client. I had one child that I work with, and before I even met him, the crisis personnel went to the school because I think the school found a note where he had written the names of some kids that had been bullying him for over a year. Mm-hmm. This is a 3rd or 4th grader. And they go to the school because they're like, oh my God, this is a hit list. He's like, you know, he's saying that he wants to, you know, hurt these kids. And when the crisis people working with the county, they, you know, contacted me and they were like, you know, Leah, I think you want to kind of, I want you to see what you can do with this family. And I'm like, So I called the family and I was like, look, the school's going to schedule a meeting, right? They're going to try to kick the kid out of the school because they don't want to risk that he will try to harm, you know, anybody in the building. I said, but at 4 years old, rarely a fourth grader, homicidal. Like, I heard that there was some bullying going on. Tell me a little bit about it. And the family's telling me about all these stories. He's being called the N-word, people, you know, like, and the parents are like, both dad and mom in the home, and dad's going off because dad's like, we told them for a year last year that this was happening to him, that he was experiencing it. They did nothing. They wouldn't, you know, they would not correct the kids. And there's a policy. They can't tell you what discipline they did for any other.
Because they're not doing any discipline. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but
and the other kids are still doing
it.
Yes. Yes.
We should run the country, Suni.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
So we're sitting up here and I'm like, I literally picked up the phone and I'm going, they're going to want a meeting. And they're like, oh, they already scheduled it for tomorrow. I don't know this family whatsoever. I was like, what time is the meeting? Let me hang up and move some clients around because you do not need to go on this meeting by yourself.
Absolutely.
And I tell that with a lot of my families, primarily because I'm going to support, I'm going to advocate for that child to get the necessary services that sometimes the schools don't really, want to give out. And especially for the Black and brown families, they don't even know that they can ask for those services.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know they have access to them. So I'm like, honey, don't do this by yourself. Or they'll come in and say, the school did this. And get this, if you are a parent, you are vulnerable. In that room, you have all of these professionals.
And they
right?
bring as many of them as they can.
They do.
And they all sit across from you. There's like 15 chairs.
Yes.
And they give you the kids' chair. And you sit across from them. And they give you a little Dixie cup.
And they tell you what the plan is for your child.
Yes. They
and
tell
the reality,
you.
The reality
they don't
of
formulate it with you.
Thank you. It's supposed to be collaborative.
I may have been in a similar situation.
Like you have some experience here.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody on this video has had some experience being in there. And so what I do, especially if the parents already had that meeting, I'm like, honey, you're going to go ahead, copy the principal, the whoever, copy the district, and then copy me on the email, and you're going to request another meeting, and this is what you're going to say. And we're going to do this again, and I'm going to be in there to help support whatever is, happening for the sake of this child. And so I can't tell you how many meetings for the school, be it for an IEP or 504 plan or, for some kind of disciplinary meeting. But it's all about advocating and going, all right, guys, come on. No, this isn't, we're not going to do it. And so they were trying to say that this 9-year-old boy had homicidal ideation and, oppositional, and he's just defiant and he's aggressive. And I'm like, slow it down. Who assessed him? And what information do you have? You have a list of names on a piece of paper. There's no plan. There was nothing specifically said or proposed, but these are a list of well-known bullies. So you guys are aware that he was being bullied. Well, I'm like, gee, well, what happened with that? That's still going on. And they totally flipped. Like, this dad was so hurt. And you can tell he was like in that meeting. And again, I just met the family on the phone the day before. I'm in between clients, so I don't have a lot of time. So I got to go, you got to trust me, okay? We're going to do this meeting together, sign the documents, let me come, and join this meeting with you. And then we participate together, and I see the disappointment and outrage on this man's face. And I'm a woman, right? So I don't know about you ladies, but whenever, especially with men, they try to hold their emotions in so hard, males. And so when they let it out and you see that pain, how deep that is, and it was raw and it was real. And he said, we tried to tell you guys he was hurting, and now you're trying to, harm him and get rid of him. And so we get off the video and I'm talking to them, and I was like, all right, guys, what do you think? And they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because it completely changed. And they started talking about, okay, well, what can we do, to support him, to help him communicate when he's not feeling safe? How can we help this kid, feel more supported here at the school? Completely different conversation. And that's because they weren't in it by themselves. And so the schools do set it up so that you, as a parent, you feel bullied. You're in this lesser position and they're in the dominant position, and you're trusting these professionals to tell you what needs to happen. And they will not collaborate. They're about the school and whatever's going to be simplest and easiest for that direction. So it can be scary.
Well, anytime somebody's picking on your child, and there are rules of civil discourse within organizations that we have all been socialized to follow since, we were Neviters. This is what you do. You have a problem. You talk to whomever is in proximity. You escalate it up the chain. You do all the things that you're supposed to do. But when I think about the bureaucracy that is education, honestly, I think of it as kind of being like the police. Yeah. They're supposed to, in theory, on paper, you're supposed to be able to say to your child, if you go to your teacher and you explain the situation to your teachers, they're not just for you, but for everybody. Your teacher's going to make sure that you feel safe and protected and cared for. But and
Yeah.
my teachers, Heather.
Nikki.
but
that is true.
it's
That
true.
is
It's
true.
true.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when you see that your kid has done all the right things, and then you step in, and as the parent, they look at you like, well, we told you we've got this. And you're like, my kid is on fire.
Yeah.
You don't have anything. And
Yeah.
then they're looking at you like, well, you didn't teach your child good conflict resolution, or, you know, whatever it is. And then they gaslight you.
Yes.
And I'm not just talking about, you know,
Yes.
from my position. I've been with other parents that have had to deal with this. You know, it's anytime the school feels like they're being challenged, just like the police, they're going to circle the wagons around themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of luck. Your kid is just, as Nikki would say, food for fodder.
Food
They
for fodder.
don't matter. The school doesn't want to spend an extra dime. So how
Mhm.
dare you demand what your child deserves in regards to a 504 or an IEP or whatever letters you want to bring into it. They don't care about that either.
Well, and I think having experienced this system as a white-bodied person, you really do believe, because what you have to know is that the system has almost never responded to us, right? And so, I mean, I know you know that because I know you see it all the time.
Yeah.
But like I was trying to talk to a white parent, and I was explaining a situation, and she was like, yeah, but you're not thinking about being in the principal's shoes. And I was like, okay, hold up. Right? Mom. And I said, I want you to imagine a world where your child gets kicked in the mouth so bad that he comes home holding his front tooth. And it is the 7th incident that you have called the school about, and no one calls you to tell you your kid is holding his own front tooth.
Yeah.
And when you call them, they say, well, that's okay because there are braces.
Right.
Well, they said, we actually have been needing to call you to talk to you about your child's behavior, which is often what happens to Black parents when they find them complaint, is they get flipped onto them, and they get their children get blamed for their own oppression. But what I really I often have to ask parents to stop and say, stop. You take 48 hours and you imagine a world in which that sweet principal, and I've said this to other white parents too, they'll say, oh, that teacher can't be doing that. I love her so much. And I'm like, you're white.
Yeah.
You're having a different educational experience with her. And so I think it really is challenging. I think like that, and I think that's what gives, that's what was the real path that helped me shift, because I saw the system not respond to me in the way that I was used to, right, when my children were brown. And there is a credibility that I have, speaking white person to white person, that parents of color are not believed. And sometimes that cognitive dissonance gap feels like the thing we will never get over in America.
Yes.
I have trouble believing that we can, because, you know, there are always going to be people that say, well, it doesn't exist because I've never experienced it. And it goes against common sense. It goes against science. It's just ridiculous. But, you know, critical thinking is just not what we do anymore.
Oh, don't get started on CRT.
The verbiage.
Don't bring that up.
The verbiage matters too. And so my son has been physically assaulted at school twice. And so the first time, the vice principal kept referring to it as the fight. And she said it like a couple times, and I was like, that's not a fight. I said, my son defended himself after being assaulted. And she did the tomato, and I said, let me be clear.
No. Yeah.
I said, I have to be clear. My son was assaulted.
Yeah.
And he has the right to defend himself.
Yeah.
And I said, he didn't stay and continue the brawl.
Yeah.
He defended, and she looked at me, she's like, well, to his credit, he was running to get the teacher. And I was like, I'm going to be clear.
Yeah.
I said, my son was assaulted. And she's like, well, he wrote a statement. And I was like, he wrote a statement and you didn't ask my permission for him to write a statement after his assault. Those words matter.
Words do matter for them,
because
especially. Yeah.
Then it was on his attendance that he was in school suspension.
Yes.
And I said, no,
Yeah.
take that off of his record. And I was told, well, what does it matter? And I said, take it off of his record.
If it doesn't matter, then what's the point?
And so,
why are you resisting taking it off the record?
Right.
It took 4 weeks.
Yeah.
With both verbal request and written. And I said, it matters, number one, because he was assaulted.
Yeah.
And we actually went to the police. I said, I have the police report. Would you like that? Because he was assaulted. I said, that's number one. I said, number two, you're not going to put an in-school suspension on my son's record for something that he didn't do. Now, if he lights toilet paper on fire in the bathroom, have at it. But that's not what happened. I said, we're not going to start stockpiling these because this creates a history of behavior. Yeah. And no one goes, oh, let's dive a little deeper and find out why that kid got this in school. So I said, no one does that.
No. They're going to assume that he was at fault, or at least partly a reason, because that's a reasonable assumption, right? They're not going to assume that, oh, wait, he was assaulted. And we tend to punish both the assaulter and the assaultee.
Which is still, to me, a ridiculous policy in and of itself.
Yes.
Because if we also have to look at power dynamics here. If you are a kid in school and you are assaulted and you do not defend yourself, you are marked. Those wretched heathens will continue to terrorize you. And am I advocating for fighting in school? Absolutely not. But having been there, I know that when you walk away after somebody beats you in the skull, do you know what happens? The next person's going to beat you in the skull. And that's just the way it is. And you know why? Because the teachers aren't making sure that these things aren't happening. When they know that two students definitely are like oil and water, rather than making sure that they are kept apart, whatever, they punish once, and they don't go back to make sure anyone is protected. But if you look for files for white lady teachers, they disappear 100%. Good luck at trying to complain.
Is
have started files.
Yeah.
Yes, Tasha, absolutely. Defend yourself. Tasha knows. Tasha's actually been my bodyguard, and it's just kind of funny because, she's, like 5 inches shorter than me. We've been in a meeting together. She turned around and looked at the vice principal and said, because the vice principal told me that if I continued to speak to her in the manner in which I was speaking to her, that she wasn't going to stay in the room. And Tasha looked at her and said, you're not going to tone police her. We're trying to advocate for a kid who was videotaped going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And
by another kid.
And the vice principal doesn't like my tone. Well, she probably didn't like that I called her a blip on the radar. Like, you're a middle school principal. Nobody's going to remember you.
Oof.
And it's so you don't like my tone because my son was assaulted. You didn't like my tone.
Well, let me just say, let me.
And now I'm in here advocating for another brown kid who is being the victim of solicitation for distribution of child pornography, and your feelings are hurt.
Yes.
But
But
we could address what Ali says here, other than the wretched heathens part. Unfortunately, schools look at these things in black and white, such as zero tolerance policy. When it comes to fights in schools, the victim gets fewer days, even if they even defended themselves. And you know what? To me, zero tolerance is lazy.
Yeah.
Zero tolerance is we don't want to get our hands dirty.
It's intentional. It goes back to
intentional.
Chet and Barbie. Chet and Barbie are going to advocate.
Yeah.
And they know
even
somebody
if it's Chet
who knows
and Barbie
somebody
versus Muffy and Bip. It's still, there's still a hierarchy even amongst the white people. Yeah. If Muffy and Bip were actually, they changed their names and they were actually, maybe living on the wrong side of town and perhaps in the porn industry, those two, their kid is not going to be treated like Chet and Barbie's kid.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
way.
Absolutely. They get ostracized just as quickly, because it's a method of being different, right? You're not quite fitting into the mainstream. And I was just going to say, one of the reasons why I can be effective working with the school, one of the main reasons is because of my position coming into the building. You have to listen. I'm talking about the health and well-being of this, particular child. But another reason is that I find the nice way of saying that those nasty things that Nikki really wants to say. I find a nice way of saying that
you're a blip on the radar
and challenging, and challenging some of the the prevailed upon kind of logics that they are trying to use to ostracize this child or to punish this child, even in a roundabout way. And I challenge it, and I will, especially when it comes to Black and brown families, I'll bring it up. I'll say, your school has a reputation for, for racism, or, not addressing these racist acts that, the kids are reporting. Like, this is not the first family that I've worked with at your school that is, shared this experience. So what's the plan? What are we going to do to make sure that this kid is safe in this building?
And then they say critical race theory and everyone jumps underneath the table.
They just go run and hide. Is that no? Running and hiding is not an acceptable plan. But yeah, we do, and we need to. And I think, especially when we talk about predominantly white spaces, I don't believe they quite understand how egregious racism and the targeted words. They don't quite get how that weighs on that body coming into the building.
Do you think they don't understand, though?
I think I do.
Understand, or do you think that they feel like it's a thing, but it's not really that big of a deal?
That's it. They don't. That's what I'm saying. They don't understand because they don't assume it's not a big deal. They really will dismiss it as, oh, those are just words, and words don't hurt. And
but call them a snowflake, and someone's definitely going to jail.
Yes.
Call them a freaking cracker. And I'm like, and people are like, yeah, but that's a racial slur. I'm like, it means freaking saltine, idiot. It's a parallel to the color.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have stressed is when someone calls you the N-word, that is akin to a physical assault.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if this baby, this little fourth grader, has been hearing this for a year, they have been getting gut punched, assaulted, and that's where the issue is. They're saying, well, these are words, and I'm like, no, that is why.
But
there
the
is
emotional trauma.
That's why there's legislation for hate speech.
Yes.
That is exactly why. But the schools won't view it that, well, those are words, this is physical. And it's like, no. So every time that comes up. In
2021, finding schools in middle schools and high schools where the words N-word go home. Why are we still seeing this? Why are our kids still coming into these schools and that's in the bathroom? And even if they report it, they're going back to that bathroom a couple of days later and it has yet to be, cleaned off, or there's something carved into the desk. And this is one of my white male student clients said at his high school, this was a few months ago, there were a couple of racist things carved into a desk he was sitting at. And he told the teacher. And he said, when he came back the next day, it was still there. And like, hear me, this was a week later, because like once a week I see your appointment. So I'm like, hey, how did that situation end up? You told the teacher, was everything okay? No, the desk is still there. Oh, did they sand it down? Did they, try to cover it? Did they put it to the side so nobody sits at it? No, it's still there. And that bothered him so much. And this is a kid that he was actually on the spectrum, and that's not something that he can even get out of his brain. It was wrong. He did the right thing. He informed the teacher, and yet he wasn't even heard and listened to, more or less like, yeah, got it. No, kind of go away. And I don't know. I don't remember. I'm sure hopefully eventually it was taken care of, but it wasn't seen as something immediate. Like there was no immediacy to it.
And
Misty,
the thing about
Misty, who is Studio T providing?
Oh, that's Tammy.
Tammy, it is emotional trauma, but even deeper, it is psychological.
Here's the thing that we know about trauma. We know that growth stops where the trauma begins. So if this started for this child in the 3rd grade, the parents reported it in the 3rd grade, it continued all the way through the 4th grade until this incident happened, that child has lost a year of school. They were denied an education, essentially, for an entire year. Their development has been put on full stop because that kid walks into that building, a nervous wreck, waiting for essentially the boogeyman to jump out of the locker, because that's what it's like. If you've never had the N-bomb thrown at you, you don't get it. Somebody might say, oh, you're fat, or your shirt's really ugly, or your eyebrows are a little bit janky.
Yeah.
It is very different from when somebody throws that word at you.
Yeah.
Because it's like
it's a punch. It's a punch.
It is. Well, you do feel it, not just, audibly, right? We do feel it within our bodies, our nervous system. It's all connected. We're all connected, right? It's a physiological response that happens with some words and used by some people.
Well, and can I just say real quick,
Mm-hmm.
there are people out there that think that like you can say it in rap songs and it's okay. For me, if I am listening to my son listens to this stuff, and even when I hear it coming from a rapper, it has the same effect on me. I can't tolerate that word in any sort of format. I don't care if it's appropriate. If I'm watching a movie and, the setting is appropriate for that word to be used, it's still
very jarring.
And so, the assumption that, oh, well, they're okay with it, so, or whatever people assume about it. First of all, no one is a monolith out here. Everybody is their own individual person, sentient. But it's one of those things where, I cannot think of a word that if we take it and apply it to anybody else, and I'm sure there are some, but I can't think of one that has that many dead souls attached to it.
It is such a heavy word. It really is. It's just that deep. I will say that, was it Ta-Nehisi Coates mentioned something a while ago, talking about his wife. Like he's the only one.
The groups that you can say, right? The groups that you can say were, yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and I felt like, oh my God, that is, that's a wonderful example of when it's just not appropriate. And so many people wanted to think that, oh no, well, if you can do this, I can do that. And there are times in our experiences in our adult lives that no, there's just certain things that are just not appropriate. It's never appropriate. And I wouldn't like it if somebody came up to my husband going, "Hey, lover boy," that would not be appropriate. I'm assuming he wouldn't like it if, people did the same to me. And those words don't have the same, you said souls attached. That was so beautifully said.
There are.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same souls attached to it, that the N word carries. And yet, still to this day, we're still fighting that. And I think the more dominant society is not recognizing how heavy even just that word weighs on the shoulders of people, especially especially our children. So they're not quick to address it when kids bring it up at the school. It's more or less like, oh, those are just kids being kids. And you're like, well.
I can tell you that my dad, who is 84 years old, he'll be 85 in July. He is in the process of trying to access some veterans benefits. And I've never really heard my dad talk about his time in the military. There would be like, he did not see active duty, but he was in the Air Force. And I don't know why he didn't see active duty, actually. But he is starting to tell me these stories, and they are all rooted in how he was treated by white men.
Yeah.
Every single story. He says that it has shaped how he has had relationships. He asked me if I thought he was mean. I said, I don't know if I'm the right person, because there's some there's some similarities in our personalities. How he relates to people.
Why do you think he didn't share it? A lot of those stories sooner. Why do you think?
Because my father is a child of abuse. My grandfather was just an asshole drunk. And racism permeated. My dad was born in 1937. My grandmother was very fair-skinned. And my grandfather was biracial. And when my father met my mother, my grandmother said, "Why are you with that dark woman? You're going to have really dark babies." And so his life has been just permeated with racism. And then he was 17, because you could be, he'd graduated high school. I guess he graduated high school when he was 17, but he enlisted, and then a month later he turned 18, but he was young when he went into the Air Force. And it was in the 50s, fun times there. And so it's just been something that has literally, it's so interwoven in his life. And I didn't know. And he has suffered, my father has suffered a lot of trauma. And a
lot of people deal with trauma by building up a wall.
He froze. His life froze. I mean, he can recall the moment where he just didn't. And I know that his house is one of the houses. My dad didn't have a mortgage on his house. He purchased his house directly from the contractor on the south side of Chicago.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure his house is one of those houses where the price was jacked up. And now it's in a neighborhood. We go back to that, Heather. And now it's in the neighborhood where my father's house is, nothing will happen. It's not a great neighborhood at all. The property value, it's that sort of stereotypical thing. And so it's like, he literally got stuck on the hamster wheel. And there was no place for him. Yeah, he was there's a lot of defeat in him. There's a lot of love and generosity and genuineness. But there's defeat. And and he's 84 years old. And I hate the fact that we're still freaking talking about the N word.
Yeah. That we
For sure.
Yeah. But just thinking about that, when we talk about trauma, right? We're talking about how people respond to trauma. And we often, when we don't have a safe outlet, or we are not taught the tools or the skills to release some of that trauma and still function in a very healthy, way, we do freeze. I tell a lot of my my clients who have experienced like different traumas, that emotion comes from the same place, right? So you're so busy trying to hold in your hurt, your pain. Guess what else you're holding in? Your joy.
Yeah.
And so when we think about a lot of people say in our community, and it's one of those things that I love, that even as Black people who don't live in the Black predominant community, we're still the community, right? And so when we think about some of the challenges in even in poor areas, we see this playing out, that trauma that that they have been exposed to, that they have completely experienced. And I'm saying from everything from how they're mistreated by the police, by hospitals, by, their own bodies, their own, everything financially. And there's no safe outlet for it. And guess what is happening? There's so much pain that is constantly being added to it. There's so much violence, there's so much hurt, and we're constantly re-experiencing that over and over and over again.
Hey,
did your cities take away the tolls? Like, so now in Illinois, there's no more, you have to have an iPass or you have to pay online.
Yeah.
And I was like, but what if you don't have like this
food desert,
super accessible way to get online?
If you don't have a bank account.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to be paying astronomical fees.
It's double.
Twice as much.
Yeah.
And that's what I started thinking. It's expensive to be poor.
It is. Oh my God.
That's why you can't get out of it.
That's right.
I wanted to ask Heather real quick, because it's not going to be real quick because nothing about this conversation is quick, and that's what I love about it. But Heather's in Minneapolis, so she had Floyd, and then she had Dante right afterward. And so when we're talking about trauma, we're talking about a generation of young people who have seen that and all of the things that came before in this past 15, 20-year period. Heather, I'd love to know what the conversations are like amongst the kids in your area, in your community. Are they fearful to go out? Are they fearful of these marauding children that are carjacking? Yeah, and not just from the perspective of your but the community at large. Well, what do you see?
That's a great question. We've been talking about that with some of the leaders of equity in our city, and we teach at one of our middle schools used the N-word. She was reading it from a book. She was a white woman. Those kids organized a protest so fast. They walked out of that school and demanded that woman get. So we're talking sixth graders, right? This happened to them. And 45 minutes later, they're organizing their own rally. And now, did they do it well? And were they like, whatever? But what we are seeing here is that the children have very little tolerance after what they've lived through to put up with it. And the problem, I think, what we're going to see is that the systems are not going to adapt to the children demanding the change, and there's a lot of talk right now about how teachers are burnt out, and they are. Some of the teachers that I love the dearest, I want to make sure that I'm criticizing all teachers. Some of the teachers that I love the dearest are barely putting one foot in front of the other. Some those who go the hardest for Black kids are texting me from break saying I haven't left my couch. I've been watching Dateline 24 hours in the same pair of pajamas. We're tired, right? But children who have experienced who watched a man die, be murdered on our street in the broad daylight, they are not going to tolerate. And I also think distance learning, like for my own children, distance learning gave my children a chance to experience education without their bodies being policed in the same way. Right? And so they're not submitting to the policing.
Yeah.
In the same way that they used to. And I think that we're talking about it and we're labeling it as the pandemic. And we're saying the pandemic and the kids and the kids and the kids. And I'm like, yeah, but as adults, if we aren't looking at this whole thing and willing to change everything about the way we teach children, especially second-ground children right now, then we're just blaming them, right? But I think we're at this point. But I think, I mean, when I watched my friend's 6th grader, like, make her own video of the protest and interview her classmates and put up, and I was like, that is brave for 12, right? That
opportunity for change. But I'm such an optimist, you know. I know all these things going on. I am a diehard optimist, and I just think, like you said, there is such an opportunity to reshape how we've always seen things, including policing, right? The policing is this way. That doesn't mean it always has to look the way it looks. Education was done this way in this building with a teacher in front. Well, the pandemic has taught us that it doesn't always have to be that way, and nor can it, because I seriously doubt if this is going to be the only pandemic we experience in our lifetime, or epidemic, right? So now is the time for us to start thinking outside the box and getting creative. And I think the kids are our biggest wealth in terms of the energy and their passions and what they're capable of doing, and listening to them and then creating outwards from what they are showing us. I love the thought of that.
I love that optimism. But as the realist in the room, I'm sorry, I have to
shoot it down.
I have to because you know, I truly, you know, in the immortal words of Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. But what we're seeing in government is just brought down to our local, from federal down to our local level. And what we have is a lot of old, moldy, generally speaking, white people who don't want to relinquish their power. And they are changing rules. They are disregarding other rules. They are breaking the machine in order to maintain power. And that is something that our children can't fight right now.
That's right.
And so, you know, in order for this beautiful change that we see fomenting, but we know needs motivation, we have to get through these ding-a-ling parents who are saying we can't teach critical race theory even though we don't teach it. So I guess my question or my concern is that how do we continue to raise this warrior spirit in our children when it's being beaten out of us?
We are resilient people by nature.
I'm tired. I need some snacks.
Honey, we are resilient.
I know a foot rub.
We are resilient. We are resilient. I mean, one of my favorite lines is the Toni Morrison. Okay. All right. She's got the bottle out. Okay, we're over. Let me switch up. I am the dream and the hope of a slave. Do you understand when I tell you, I wake up with that type of mindset, that type of energy, that if you could not, I should not exist. You know, my parents on both sides were, you know, Black folks, and, you know, they were enslaved people on both, you know, sides. I should not exist. Under those conditions. How do I exist? You know, single mom, 3 kids, poor, south side of Chicago. How do I exist? How am I educated?
No.
Oh, I love that.
That was
Mia.
so
Her-
good.
I know.
Brought it on back to Kwanzaa. Hello. Yes. But yes. And so it's that finding that purpose, that passion, that drive. We are resilient. We have faced hard times. We have faced even harder times. I mean, I cannot feel hopeless when I know that generations back, my families
Thanks,
were,
Brian.
if they had a roof over their head, they were, starving and hungry and had to really work for that meal in front of them. And yet my husband keeps buying TVs like we got 4 people in the house. We don't need more than a couple of TVs, but he keeps buying TVs.
Is that a black people thing? Because I gotta tell you, my dad had a TV in every single room. We lived in a ranch. You could hear the TV on the other side.
The TV in the mirror. I was in a hotel, and
Yes,
the
the
mirror
win in
was
Vegas.
the
Oh,
TV
I saw
in the
that.
bathroom. Yes,
If
we
we
need
have
that.
TVs in bathrooms at hotels, you cannot tell me that we are not just tired in need of a little rest and recovery and get right back to the fight. You know what I'm saying?
The thing that I try for myself in my work, I try hard to think about long ball and short ball, right? And I think Black women specifically have taught me when I'm exerting my energy in anger, that's not going to be fruitful. And when it's time to get cold mad, that slow, cold anger versus that hot anger. I think that's been the thing that I've learned the deepest this year.
I like that, and you are correct.
Just
take that time, because that slow anger, you're slower to act. You're more purposeful. It's more about being consistent and planning. Whereas that quick anger is like an emotional response, right? And you're gonna regret it. You're probably gonna do or say something you regret. So I get it. I absolutely get it.
I am learning to harness the power of the slow anger.
Yes.
I have to go into my bathroom sometimes and commune with the nature of my plants.
Yes.
And I am learning to harness the power of the slow anger, because there has been some stuff you just, like sometimes you're just like, yeah, this is going on, and I know that it's going on, and I know that this chick does not know what she's talking about, but I just got to get through this moment in time. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we've had that conversation once too often. And now, and because the thing of it is that, and I say this all the time, my kids say, and Misty gets this, my kids say to me all the time, you don't know what it's like to be biracial. Yes, slow anger is tough for Black women at times because we consistently have things thrown at us.
Yeah, it's like
Multiple
the video
things.
game Kaboom. Do you remember that? Like in the 80s, the guy had the bombs and he went across the top of the screen, was just dropping, and you had to run and catch the bombs before they blew up. That's what it's like.
Yep.
Well, and I think what I'm sort of realizing even in this moment is, like, you say I go hard, but you said this early on tonight, Nikki, but I also can go to Target, right, without a receipt, with a return in my hand in the middle of the day. I mean, I just think about the emotional tax that I don't pay in the grocery store and in the checkout line, and it's not charged to me. It's not that, right? And so I wonder if that does make it so I can push really hard. I mean, because my white body gives me breaks because of what our society is.
Oh, for sure. I think one of the thing that the thing that still kind of flabbergasts me is, and this does, and I go back to this because the vice principal of the school didn't like my tone after my son was assaulted. After ongoing and continuing harassment that was clearly escalating. And she was very comfortable. I mean, she had her legs crossed, and she don't have kids, and that just irritates me.
And she had the straight lips, didn't she? She was pursed lips like this.
And you don't have no kids. But she was justified in her response to me.
And she was going to shut you down.
She was, and I was like, I'm like, look at me. And I actually wasn't trying to be mean when I said you're a blip on the radar. I knew that it would cut her, but I was like, let's be real. You're not impactful. Vice principals of middle schools are the disciplinarians. Nobody cares unless you're the bad kid. And so it was like, but she wanted to be seen, and she felt like I was being disrespectful because of her position. And I was like, we all have a position.
Right.
Like you chose that position. I didn't choose that for
but
you.
I think too, it's a little, it's even deeper than that. I think we started off, and Nikki, actually, I'm not sure which one of you had mentioned how white women can, they do have a part to play in racism and systemic racism, right? And so here you are policing my, tone. Your focus is more about summing me up as, being irrational, which counters womanism and feminism, right? We're supposed to be able to be emotional or not and still be seen as rational and logical and capable women. And yet she undercut you right then as a woman even by saying, look at your tone. You are irrational. You are emotional. You are incapable of making sense and taking care of business. You are, so it totally...
it pivots the conversation.
It did.
Yeah.
And it also, and this is the deviousness about racism, is that even the person perpetuating it is harmed by it. Here you are as a woman, you just harmed yourself, not just in this racial conversation, but as a woman to woman, you just undercut a lot of the work that feminists have been doing for generations. And I'm sure she would call herself a feminist. She probably
guaranteed,
right? And yet here you are as a Black woman, you're not allowed, you're not, strengthened, or you're not going to be uplifted because we're still with that power dynamic and control dynamic. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that one conversation.
I definitely agree. I mean, Tasha and I are thick as thieves, especially when it comes to our kids and our kids at the school. We are Black female homeowners in an affluent neighborhood. And if you call us, we're in the car parking in the school parking lot, still on the phone with you because we have the ability to afford homes over here, but still be on the fly. Because if you call me, I'm going to come get my kid.
You're available.
Right. And you know that I work because I told you that I work. And so we're both kind of like these anomalies in that because in this town, I should say. And it's not necessarily with the presence of a man.
Yeah.
There are men there, but this idea of, well, I actually do show up in my workout clothes because that's what I do. But it's not this, I've just been sitting at home catching up on, General Hospital. No, and I think it stuns them. I think it stuns them that in 5 minutes we can be at that school. And I do drink Starbucks. I do. But I think that there's a lot about who we are that just kind of throws them for a loop.
Yeah.
Well, it's
and
Yeah.
we're present and we're there, and it's no, I mean, and it is a choice. It's a very conscious choice for a Black family to move to a lily white suburb.
Oh yeah.
well,
Stop it.
Her
Misty.
ankles.
it comes back. It's that white supremacy piece, though.
Yeah.
You know, people don't want to say that white supremacy is everywhere, but that is a perfect example. White supremacy is to be able to take a conversation about a child's rights being violated and turned it into a tale of woe about how you hurt my feelings because you didn't address me by my proper title. White supremacy is January 6th. They just let somebody out to go be in somebody's wedding before they put her ass back in jail and wait for her hearing. That
nice.
would not be afforded in
nice.
another direction. If a parent called a Black assistant principal out of their title, it would be egregious if the Black assistant principal called that parent out on that. But if you turn that train around and point it in the other direction, it's something that you were just supposed to sit back and say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, Vice Principal Bebop. It's okay.
Yeah.
That is part of the shift that needs to happen. It's being able to continue to stand in our space. It's being able to work with allies who can say things that we can't, and make sure that, you know, we're all together linking arms and walking forward together.
Yeah.
Sometimes I step forward and sometimes she steps forward or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work if we are factionalized all the time.
Yeah.
It's like the Hutus and the Tutsis. If we're going to continue to do that, then you've got to worry about somebody else coming in and cutting us all off at the knees.
Absolutely.
What continues to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's why I think white women examining their bias, because I've said it before, we pick the churches, we pick the schools, we pick the houses, we pick the curtains, we pick the play dates. And that's why I think so much of this work is pivotal to white women being courageous for us to actually understand our feminism and have freedom in this caste system. Black women have to be leading us.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another big issue with school policy is, so one of the key components that you were speaking to earlier, Aaliyah, about it's supposed to be collaborative when the school puts an action plan into place. It is supposed to be collaborative. Well, if you, the oppressor, wants to fix the oppression, that doesn't work.
What oppressor wants to fix things?
Well, exactly.
Right?
That's the point. So if you take away a collaborative effort and you put in place this is the plan we're going to put into place for your child. And so these are the things that continue to happen. You still have a group of white people backed by policy that didn't even have a suntan person in mind.
Well, maybe tan mom. Maybe tan mom is there.
And then they, it's like, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to make this better. And standing in that space where you realize, ask the people, reparations. Don't tell me that you're going to give free college to Black students. You're going to let kids go to college for free and take part in classes that were already going to be scheduled and run. So there's no money that you have to come up with. And you're going to say, it's like, I don't need you to tell me how to spend my money.
Well,
not to mention go grocery shopping.
Not to mention, you can say, I'm going to give you free college, and then you can also change the admission requirements so that they can't get in. I mean, there's always a way around it when you're running the process.
Elgin Elgin city here in Illinois did vote for reparations for Black families. And I think the initial proposal was something to do with
Elgin or Evanston?
Was it okay? Is it Evanston?
It's Evanston.
I think it was Evanston. I think it was
Evanston. Yes.
So let me say, I remember reading the initial proposal being a check for families to remodel homes or to fix homes or something very specific, and the Black folks pushed back and said, we don't want that. We don't want you to tell us what to do with the money you're giving. Like, what? We don't need you to, tell us how to spend our money. And so they refused it. And I want to say that they did correct it, or maybe they, figured something else out. But I just remember just reading that story and going, yeah, how do you say that's reparations? But only if you are even a homeowner, good for you. But
there you go. But there it went. They bumper bolded,
very
right?
narrow. How many percentages of the Black families then would even qualify for that reparation? And if you're too poor to
so then we're back to square one.
Well, and then you can just gentrify them out of the neighborhoods anyway.
But my 84-year-old father is not going to college.
What? I mean, come on, he could set a record.
My 84-year-old father, and that's the thing. It's like, so you're going to decide, who you're going to give reparations to, and you're just going to start way down here with the class of 2021, 22, and everybody that came. So all the people who got cheated out of their homes, all the people who spent 50 years paying a 20-year mortgage, all of the people who couldn't get into schools, which is why we have historically Black colleges and universities. So they're just done, even though they're still here, because we're all still here. And then you're just going to start way down here at this pie piece.
Right. And let me just say this. So I was having a debate, I use the term loosely, with someone about this very issue. And his point of view was, well, I mean, we're not telling them what to do with the money, Misty. Because they have been so disenfranchised for so long, they won't know what to do with a big check. So this is helping them know where to put the money. I said, oh, and does that mean that they should put it in your bank? So then you can make the money off of the interest? I mean, so who is that going to benefit? So to your point, the idea of being able to get the pat on the back for doing the right thing and also reap the benefits from steering the process, that's not reparations.
No, and we don't need to come up with a new definition of what reparations is. It's freaking 40 acres and a mule.
Well, but even that is fraught with peril. Where are they going to give you the acreage? I don't want land in Nome, Alaska. Alaska and I don't go well together. Not good for my skin.
Why are we rewriting the rules? It's already, it was written down. And
but I think there's always been this this very patronizing way of interacting with Black bodies, like adult bodies. You guys met my husband. You know my husband. He's really a humble guy, but he had his PhD. He's been in education for a couple decades. He knows education. I tease him and call him my walking encyclopedia. However, there are times, a lot of times when he's in a room with other white educators who are not even as educated and qualified or experienced as he is. And I have witnessed this very sense of talking down to him. Just very patronizing behaviors. And he's calm. He's so humble. It doesn't even shake him because he just gets to talking. And at some point you're going to shut up and recognize you're going to learn something if you're quiet, But when I experience those things too, that has been the way since Black bodies were enslaved in this, country, that you are childish and irresponsible, and you wouldn't know what to do with money, and therefore we're doing you a blessing by keeping you poor, because hey, you just blow it anyway and still be back poor, so we just saved you a step. And it is still it is still part of those stereotypes that continue to exist,
right.
That it doesn't matter how many professionals, it doesn't matter how many degrees and jobs and Black faces you see in front of you in these different roles, there's still a mindset of that individual is an exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to they
actually,
these are Black, they represent Black folks, and the person on television that you're modeling, your interpretation of Blackness off is actually an exception to, the rule. So that is what nobody even learns CRT, right? Nobody learns that. Nobody teaches that. They talk about it in law school, but that is what talking about Black contributions and Black bodies will do for everybody. So we can actually have these relationships that are open and not hidden, where we don't have to hide our thoughts or our feelings, that we can share because we are meeting as equals and seeing each other as equals. And we can't really get to that equality until it's accepted that, we are seen as, capable of being equals, of making decisions, of having a chair in that room, having ownership in that room, so.
Well, and again, but that is the secret hidden, not so hidden power, is that stepping into that space, we don't have to step into this space. We are, we are not each anomalies, random, that one happens to be really good at this. That one happens to be really good at this. They must have got the extra white gene. Nah, fool. But it's the idea that when we are at that place, if there were no barriers, we would surpass.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite part of the concept of community organizing, and of the work that I get to be really lucky in our city, is that in order to organize anybody, you have to deeply believe that if the person you are trying to leadership, if the barriers were removed, they could come up with their own solutions. And if you don't believe that about a people, you can't power with them.
Yeah.
And so to me, and also, can I just name that really learning that on a deeper level has helped rid me of a lot of white saviorism that I grew up with within the church and evangelicalism and Christianity. Mm-hmm. It's really helped me sort of pull back and examine a lot of things that I thought were right that were actually just really racist. Mm-hmm. And so, but believing that and really believing that every parent I work with wants the same thing for my kids as I want my kids changes the way I interact with them, changes the way I speak with them, changes what I believe about them, and changes the way that we work together.
Mm-hmm. You humanize them.
Yeah.
Framing is so important. Mm-hmm. Language, the power of language is so important. What Desiree says here, there are poor white people too, is the question, why are they poor? Sometimes the answer is that they're lazy, just like with Black people, but only sometimes. Other times it's they were given a bad draw. The wind blew from the east when they were born. Whatever it is, it's the ability to make an excuse when the person looks like you, because it's a lot easier to put them on that pedestal because of the likeness that they have. And they may have nothing in common with you. But
that empathy and compassion that comes from that, I get it. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the other place where people get lost. You know, it's quick to say words don't matter until we're talking about how it lands on us, and then words are a very big deal. That has to be coming back to empathy again. If we could find a way to think of, there's this show, this Netflix series called Sense8, and it's written by one of the Wachatas.
I've seen it.
But I mean, I just love it.
Yeah,
the whole theme of it is I am we.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am we. I mean, it's
borrow
like
from each other's.
It's life-changing because it means that we are all connected in this way that requires us to look at the person next to us with the same empathy and compassion that we should be doling upon ourselves. And the problem in our society is that we don't even give it to ourselves.
That's true.
We value ourselves for who we are, what we look like, what size our pants are, and what do we produce. And that is the problem. As long as we maintain barriers based on the superficial, I can never be we.
Well, but that question of poor white people, look, there are people who will consistently vote against their own their own benefits, their own lives, in order to continue what they believe is the oppression of other people. And so, you know, you're voting for things, or like recently there was some bill put up that would increase the child tax credit or what have you. And you have so many people that are like, hey, you know what? I'm sure I could benefit from it, but that person over there can benefit from it too. So no, we won't need it. We're going to pull ourselves up by our own, votes against themselves. They do. Yeah. They really do. And that's one of the things that is kind of the saddest, because then, you know, everybody doesn't live in an urban area. The majority of the country, they live in these very rural areas. And you want to talk about poverty. You want to talk about poor funding schools, no businesses, no stores. And they think that we're living the high life, like, you know, Chicago, you know, living a high life because there's buses and there's transportation to get around. And at least you have a store, you know, why are you complaining? You have some areas that they don't have that. And if you don't have a car, you're stuck. And you're waiting on somebody, like people are really living poorly, and there's anger and hurt and pain in that. And then when they're being told that, hey, you got these black and brown bodies over there in the city and they're taking all your benefits, that's why you're poor. You know, that's why you're living like this. You're in that trailer because of blah, 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 you know, and there's anger, and they're like, oh no, we're not going to pass this bill. We're not going to support that person because they're going to take care of these black and brown bodies. And you're like, ouch, we're missing out again. We're hurting each other. You're spreading that hurt around. And
but I even wonder how much of that is true. I mean, when you listen to somebody like Joe Manchin, who says, you know, my constituents don't want bring back better, whatever that hell.
Yeah.
But I mean, the polls are showing that like more than 70%
they do
of West Virginians actually want it, because they realize, holy shit, we are the 49th state in the union in everything. Yes. One of the poorest. 94% of their budget is covered by the government. Yes. And they're going to say no to something like that.
They voted for him, though. They vote for him.
They vote for him. Absolutely, they vote for him.
And they're not holding him accountable. Are they going to kick him out of office?
No, because there's nobody else running. That's the thing. The other people that are running, I mean, you've got shit on the shoe over here, and then over here, you've got shit on the step. But either way, it's still gross. I'm sorry. I just realized I said that out loud.
No, that's all right, Misty. You went with their government names, I see. That's
yes, that's birth certificate, you know. But you know what I mean. I mean, again, getting back to that whole political piece of all of this, like Ali says here, good point, Desiree Lee, this racial construct is a tool to keep us divided because we have more in common than different, but they're exploited to think and believe that it is someone else's fault. It is wanton exploitation, and we should be smarter than this. I mean, even Wile E. Coyote knows better, but here we are chasing this.
When you're white and you're growing up all your life being taught that everything you have is not only yours because you worked harder, but that everybody else who doesn't look like you wants to come and take it. Yeah. Very comfortable lie to swallow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those were the two main philosophies that I was raised under. Right? That we had what we had because my parents knew how to work harder and smarter.
Yeah.
And that if we voted for a Democrat, people were going to come take what we had worked for.
Yep. It's just such a funny thing to say, like when people call Black people lazy, and it's like, really? Because we spent a long time like building this country.
Building this shit.
I'm like, maybe we're just napping. You know, it's like maybe we just took that break that we couldn't take.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a funny thing because it's like people can really just like divide their heads.
Yes.
And go, yeah, they're trying to take our stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had to work for free because they don't know how to manage their money. Yeah. And that's why they got ham hocks and chitlins. And yeah, they had to have, you know, Shay Whitey tell them what to do.
But people do believe that.
Yes.
People do. So Ali and I were, we have these friends. It's that trend going around Twitter right now. I had a white friends, and oh my God, if we don't
Rhode Island.
Yes. And so we had a couple white friends in particular, because like we still have white friends, but we had a couple in particular that after January 6th, we actually stopped being friends. Like they got angry because I mentioned that it would look a lot differently had those been Black bodies, and
100%.
The you know, the
200%.
The husband was really upset that I was politicizing any of this and got really angry, and we're no longer friends.
How do you not politicize?
I mean, it was political.
Capitol.
It was at the Capitol.
Look, that's okay. And
Love
so,
people.
And like I can go into like with this couple. I remember I was asking. I was like, okay, look, I cannot have friends in my life right now that would be willing to vote for racism. We have people dying. This is serious. These are my kids. I'm looking at, I said, I can't do it. And I have a huge diverse, friendship group. And they were like, Aaliyah, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm not asking who did it. I'm just saying, like, if you vote for racism, please cut me off and it would be okay. And there's much love and I care for you, but my soul cannot tolerate that in my, close relationship. Cause I'm an emotional person. If we're friends, like we're close, we're hanging out, we're sharing. And I'm like, you have to back me in my life and my family. That has to be important. And so the wife sent me a text separate from the husband to say, hey, you know what? I voted Democrat. I'm good. And I was like, whoa, why would she text me separate from him? And well, we know why. And so, we would often go to dinner with them and other white couples in kind of like a dinner group. And these are older people. A lot of them were even retired and they had, vacation homes, and they were talking about their trips and going on cruises in the Greek Isles and whatnot. And we're sitting there like, oh my God, wow, this is wonderful. And we're sharing about our vacation stories and things. And then somebody brought up the property taxes wanting to be raised a little bit. And somebody else was saying, well, I don't want my property tax going towards, immigrants in the schools. And I'm telling you, like, so as often as the case, and you know, in certain environments, you may be the only Black person there, the only Black body there. My husband and I are the only Black bodies there. We're looking at each other like, did they just say, like, no, they didn't. No, they don't. No, this didn't just happen. And we were like, well, you got all of this thing. You're even able to retire, and you live. You have these beautiful homes, multiple right? You hear me? On the end of homes. You're going on vacation. You're traveling to visit your kids here. You're talking about
what don't you have?
What don't you have that you're worried that these young folks getting an education is going to take from you? And they were serious, and they start every dinner with a prayer. Like, let me not gloss over that. We held hands and prayed to Jesus before every meal. And
Jesus.
Did you not mention how there's some cognitive dissonance happening that you're sitting back, you're like, okay, this is happening. How much do we talk about? Like, how much do we confront in this very moment? And it's more of a soft, and you saw from the young to the old, they were not trying to open their minds up to embrace educating immigrants. You know, and because in their heads they're thinking immigrants are the Mexicans coming across the border. I don't know if you remember the caravan,
the murderers and the rapists. Yes,
yeah, the murders and that. Mm-hmm. And it just threw me. You know, my grandmother always said, if she has a table and you are hungry, you are welcome. It doesn't matter. You know, we don't come from riches, so you don't matter. If you are hungry, you are invited to that table. And that has always been in my mindset, that I look around at what I have and I'm like, all right, if we got to share, we got to cut back, if we got to do something so that other people can, you know, try to have too, that's what you got to do. And yet not everybody thinks that because they feel threatened. Well, they really are.
Just remember what Elon Jovan Musk said. You know, he said, if you start taxing the billionaires, you better look out, because then they're going to start coming for your money too. The mindset is so skewed, and there are so many people in our society that are so desperate to be that.
Yeah.
That they feel like if they give an extra 17 cents,
yeah,
in whatever it is, that's going to, you know, they're not going to be America's next billionaire. And they actually put themselves in this category that they're nowhere near.
Yeah.
Just because, again, it's that need for status.
Yes.
And you know, you'll never overcome that.
I think that the thing that Aaliyah and I deal with, in the reality of, though, is that wounded children are really expensive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they become wounded adults, which is very expensive for society.
Yeah. And so I think if there was anything I could help white, you know, poor or Christian people understand, is they don't know that they are paying top dollar for the least quality services that we can possibly give humankind. In, you know, privatized prisons and in Section 8 housings that are really just tax shelters for the rich, and in keeping poor folks in a poor system. And when I look at the families, of finding moms, right, of what, you know, paying foster parents more that we would give a family, but then finding those birth parents back when those, I mean, it's so layered, but that's where I think a wounded child is the most expensive thing that a society can produce. And every time we are willing as a society to co-sign for the abuse of a child, we are signing up a real big bill. And you know what? We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be a murderer. We don't know if it's going to be, right? We don't know. But I don't know. It's a lot easier to love on children and educate them than it is to restore really hurt adults.
100.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say that I could probably talk for another 17 hours, but you do know that we have been on for a long time.
Oh my goodness.
Because this has been such a rich,
This was an
rich
amazing conversation. Yeah.
And you know what's really, really great about it is that I truly believe that if more conversations like this happen, if more people start, maybe they don't have the courage or the chutzpah or whatever you want to call it to have the conversations. Yeah. If they start by listening to the conversations and then they start following whatever you want to do, people out there that are doing this thing, Heather and Aaliyah are women that are killing it in their communities in ways that, it's not just admirable and you can look at it and say, oh man, wow, I just learned something today, and then go back to making the split pea soup. But very actionable ways. They're talking. They're out there. The more we do this, the more we make it our responsibility, rather than kicking the can forward and expecting somebody else to pick it up.
That's right.
The more likely we are to really start to see the change that we were talking about earlier, that I was a little bit realistic.
There's that hope right there.
I mean,
brought her over to our side.
Out loud, I am realistic, but in the back of my mind, I have this deep-seated desire to want to. I mean, that's why I talk about this stuff all the time. I mean, I'd rather talk about the Marvel MCU, but the fact is, that's not going to change our society.
Yeah.
But these kinds of conversations are.
Absolutely.
And to be in the presence of women that are just getting it done and that are not apologizing for it, I just love it. Oh, wait, Carrie has a question here. Quick question. Am I a bad person if I listen to 90s rap?
No.
Tupac, Dre, etc. I don't say the N-word. Okay, so I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, why would it be bad? I mean, now, if you're like dropping the N-bomb when you're walking through the Target, that might not be a really good way to manage it. But I mean, I think that as a person who really hated rap, like when it was becoming a big deal, and honestly was a bit embarrassed about it, I didn't really understand the cultural significance of it until probably like 5 years ago, to be honest. Like now I can kind of listen to Public Enemy and Twitch whenever the comes out. Like I come out like with a headache and like a little bit of a lean. But there is such, especially 90s rap, because I believe that back then there was a purpose for it. It wasn't just, I mean,
it was more conscious rap.
It was conscious. It was political. Yeah. Now it's just, maybe it's political now. I really wouldn't know. I'm at that age where I don't understand the words that they're saying, because I think once you hit 45, it's all like, rah, 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 rah. But so I say go for it, Carrie. Anyone else?
No, I do. I will turn on some Pac or Jay-Z. Some of the things that I experience, sometimes I need to get pumped up. Sometimes I need to get, F the police. Sometimes I need that, that gangster spirit to kind of hype me up and build up my confidence to walk into some of the spaces that I don't feel as comfortable or safe in. To remind myself that you got this. You're meant to be there. You're supposed to be there. You could do it. Like it gets me hyped. So I say go for it.
Everyone's got to have an anthem.
We do.
Ladies, again, thank you for helping us round out 2021. I still don't know the year. Because I mean, like, this is just such a great way to start moving forward and just pumped up and motivated. And if you don't follow Heather Anderson, you're missing out. I'm not even kidding you. I'm going to say something else too, and it's probably going to make me cry a little bit, but Heather, when I watch your kids, when I see the joy, especially in your daughter, I never had that kind of joy as a kid. I never settled in myself enough to be able to feel that. And so when I see your posts and I see your kids, but especially Hattie, I have to tell you, it warms my heart every single time. If you're not following Heather, you're missing out. And Aaliyah, how do we find you on social? Just so that, are you not on social, damn it?
I have an Instagram account, and it is just like I started it. It's just Aaliyah, period Levi. It's at Aaliyah.Levi. I don't have a cool handle or anything like that, and because I'm not as into all of the social stuff, but
banana sandwiches is available. I heard.
Heather, a friend of mine, by the way. I definitely am looking forward to kind of following you and being inspired by you. I love what you do, and I love your energy, and I see why Nikki talks about you constantly. Like, she really does support you in what you do. So you keep that energy going. I mean, we need more, from not just from you, but we need, more people to copy and emulate what you're doing. So that's wonderful.
Yeah. That blue check is coming your way, Heather. I feel it.
I've had many amazing teachers, and I'll close with this story. For me, I had to apologize to my daughter recently for something that I did, and I was like, I figured out that I was triggered and I lost my temper, and here's why it was on me and it wasn't on you. And she just looked at me and she blinked twice and she was like, "Don't drop your trauma at my door."
That is right. That is right.
It is a riot.
I was thinking, like, I was really hoping for this, like, oh, I get it and I understand and right? But what happened, I was like, yeah.
Right.
Not hers.
Not her.
I didn't have reasons in the world, but it still felt shitty to her to receive it. She didn't do anything to receive it. Yeah. And so I think that's why I believe in treating children with dignity so much, because they have so much to teach us. They have so much to teach us if we will just respect them. And so parenting my children is the joy of my life. It is allowing me to heal all the places in which I was not parented well. Yeah. And I will also say that learning from the three of you tonight has been an incredible treasure. I don't take lightly being invited into this space as a white woman. I don't take that lightly. So I just want to say thank you for trusting me with inviting me here. It means a lot.
You're part of the family, Heather.
Yeah, right. She's invited to the barbecue.
You're coming to the cookout. You are coming. Just no raisins in the potato salad, please.
Thank you, Misty. You are hilarious, by the way. Thank you so much. This has been very easy. So I appreciate the support from you as well.
Well,
so
I mean, I'm going to be following your basic handle because mine is basic too. And, I just want to say that if your husband comes in with another TV, I would like for you to post it. Because, I feel like we're going to start a support group for women who are going to have to move out because there's too many TVs.
There's too many TVs. There's more TVs in the house than there are bodies. What can you do?
What can you do? But you did introduce me to the fact that I do think someone needs to do an epidemiological study on it. I don't know if it's a man thing or, we just have to figure this out. But again, and Nikki, I have to say to you, my partner in parlance, I love you.
I love you too. This was an awesome way to round out the year. I'm so super, this gave me such great joy. And I am so glad that there are people like us that we are on the front lines. Yeah. We are having the conversations in this. I mean, it gives me hope. I'm an optimist. And No, I think it's a great group. I think it's contagious, and we still have our wonderful audience who we also need to thank, because you know what, you guys, we're coming up on 18 months pretty soon.
Oh wow,
18 months. We're coming up on 2 years.
In June.
Oh, you mean ThoughtFLOW. I thought you meant being locked in our houses.
Being locked in our houses.
I was going for the bright star, Misty. I was going for the bright
You know me
star.
and stars. I'm driving too fast to see those stars.
No, and so, definitely some of our audience has been with us since the beginning.
Day one.
People have come, yeah. And so thanks for spending, 21 with us.
I mean, you must really like us to be on the phone with like nearly 3 hours, seriously.
Oh my
Do you have
gosh,
anything
yeah.
else to do, people? No, I'm
But
just
that's
kidding.
really good conversation, and I am glad that you guys allowed us to just even be a part of this discussion. So that it's such a pleasure.
Well, now that we're getting to know you, ask Heather. We'll just suddenly be calling you. Hey, you want to come on again? Come to our show. You'll be like, oh no.
My husband's a talker in the family.
You know what?
No.
And he can come too. You guys can be like partners.
There we go.
Again. So one last time, everybody, happy 2022.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. Whether you just started listening to us or you've been listening since day one, we're humbled. And, I'll toast you tonight.
Yes.
When I hit this tequila. And thank you for everything.
Have a blessed New Year, ladies and everybody. Thank
you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy Merry, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.